Without further ado then, I will do the honors of introducing Kevin Shafer, who's going to kick off the Chicago River Summit for us. We're just so excited to have him here today. Kevin Shafer is the Executive Director of the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District, or MMSD. MMSD is a regional government agency that provides water reclamation and flood management services for about 1.1 million customers in 28 communities in the greater Milwaukee area. Since becoming executive director in 2002, Kevin has been instrumental in providing national and regional leadership in implementing gray and green infrastructure. He has advocated and implemented a regional flood management program, a renewable energy program, and a private property inflow and infiltration program. Kevin's 2035 vision propelled MMSD forward with climate change adaptation through an aggressive program to convert to renewable fuels, install green infrastructure, and preserve floodplains. Kevin holds a master's degree in civil engineering, water resources from the University of Texas, and a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from the University of Illinois. And with that, I will let you take it from here, Kevin.
Thank you, Chelsea.
So I'll stop sharing so you can. You're welcome.
Okay, can you see that? Yep, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, Kevin Shafer, Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District. I'm actually an Illinois native. I grew up there, spent my whole life down in Rantoul, and then, as you heard, went to University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana for my bachelor's degree. So Chicago, Illinois is my home, as is Milwaukee, and I've been up here since 1997 and started at the district in 1998 as the head of engineering. I'm a civil engineer by background. And, you know, I looked at this PowerPoint, I developed it at the beginning of this year, and while it's still very applicable, some of the things just seem so different now because of the pandemic that we're all living through. This first slide just shows some of the issues that we've been having with high lake levels along Lake Michigan. As you know, Milwaukee is very similar to Chicago. MMSD is really like a little brother of MWRD, and we are facing the same issues I'm sure that Chicago's facing. The lake levels are high. We had a huge storm come in January of this year, flooded out chambers at our treatment plants. That's the picture on the right there, and then just had flooding along some of the surface roads at our plants. So we're facing climate change today. I don't think there's any question about it that the climate has changed and is changing as we sit here. And we're gonna have to face that together moving forward. And we need to do it in a distributed, thoughtful way that really brings together all the different pieces of our approaches. So I'm gonna go through some background here and then kind of end on things I've learned. I'll tell you up front, 20 years ago, I don't think I ever thought that we would be a leader on green infrastructure or really thought of the plan that has developed. But it went from a program where we were pushing it out the door, where now people are pounding on our door to do it. So we're really seeing more and more partners come to the table with this.
Kevin, I'm sorry to jump in, but we see the speaker notes.
You do?
We don't actually, yeah, it's not showing just the presentation slide. I was premature in my thumbs up. I thought it would.
No, that's fine.
Settle.
Let me try again.
And it did work when we tested it, everyone, so I'm sure we'll get it to work again.
Is that better?
Still showing the notes for some
There we
reason.
go. How's that?
Yay, we're there. Okay, thank you. Take it away.
Okay. So MMSD, we treat wastewater at 2 wastewater or water reclamation facilities, and we also have a flood management authority. There's not a lot of utilities in the country that have this dual authority. I think MWRD might, but it really is a benefit to us because we can really look at the entire hydrologic cycle when we're trying to deal with water, both from the flooding standpoint and from the wastewater standpoint. As Chelsea said, 411 square miles. It's basically all of Milwaukee County except for one small community, South Milwaukee, and then part of different counties around the area, 28 different municipalities, 1.1 million people. The hatched area that you see in the middle of this graphic is a combined sewer, which I'm sure everyone on this call knows about, and then the rest of the area is a separate sewer system. So we really have to deal with two peak flows that come into our system because of this different setup of the piping. We have two water reclamation facilities. Jones Island went online in 1926 and South Shore went online in 1966. Both treatment plants on a normal day will treat around 65, 70 million gallons a day each. South Shore can go up to 300 million gallons a day, and Jones Island can go up to 390, which we'll probably be testing later on today because we're supposed to get some rain. And one thing that makes us unique from other utilities around the country, when Jones Island came online in 1996, we started producing something called Milorganite out of the biosolid product that is produced by wastewater treatment. Milwaukee organic nitrogen. We've been producing it since 1926. And it's been a product that, number one, is so sustainable. It's a great way to reuse biosolids in a beneficial manner. It returns nutrients to the soil, but it also is a great revenue source for us. We're on target right now to sell over $12 million in Milorganite this year. Last year was 11 million. I think the year before that was 11 million as well. So it's a great way to offset our costs. Similar to Chicago, we have a deep tunnel system. Actually, prior to me coming to Milwaukee, I was a consultant and did part of the design for the Calumet system for MWRD. So I'm familiar with that southern piece of your tunnels. And ours is very similar. It's 300 feet below ground. It holds 521 million gallons of water, 28.5 miles long, 17 to 32 feet in diameter. It was not designed to capture everything. It was designed to get us capture everything but 1 to 2 overflows per year. Unfortunately, I think some of my predecessors probably oversold the tunnel and said it would do everything in such a great way. And we know that there's never one source to all these problems, but it's done pretty well. So the EPA requires a combined sewer system to capture and clean greater than 85% of all the water that comes to it. Right now, our system since 1993, we've captured and cleaned 98.3% of all the water that comes to us. So because I still have friends in Chicago, and I know whenever we have an overflow, there's a story down there because I hear about it from my friends. It's only 1.7% of the time. It really does not happen often at all. And, you know, we're doing more to try to get that 1.7%. And that's where I talked about earlier. You can't do everything with one initiative. It takes a whole library of work to get this done. We do a lot of heavy construction. This is the Harbor Siphon project, digging new siphons underneath the inner harbor so that we can deliver more flow to Jones Island. This is a gate structure that's actively used today. And we do even really cool things, like 2 years ago, we ripped out a dam, not in our purview, but it was a flood impeding dam. And it was in lawsuits for probably 10 or 15 years. And between a variety of conversations between myself, the mayor of Milwaukee, Tom Barrett, and the county exec, Chris Abley at the time, MMSD bought this beautiful dam for $1. It was such a great deal. Bought it for $1 and tore it out and then sold the land back to the county for $1. So it was a way for us to remove that ugly impediment to fish and flooding and a flood inducer and make it more natural. So in 2009, I wrote a vision and really had it divided into two halves. The integrated watershed management side, which was 0 combined sewer overflows, 0 separate sewer overflows, 0 homes in the 100-year floodplain, acquire 10,000 acres through our Green Seams program, which I'll talk about in a minute, and then use green infrastructure to capture the first half inch of rainfall. Now, When I came out with this vision in 2009, the engineers in the room would laugh because zero combined sewer overflows is pretty hard to get to. But I'm not going to have a goal for one CSO or 6 CSOs. That's not a goal. That's just doing what the regulations tell you. So I said we'll get to zero. The other half of the vision that I wrote was for climate change and adaptation, striving to get us to be 100% renewable with all of our energy sources and having 80% of that energy being self-produced, either through digester gas, landfill gas, solar, wind, whatever. And also try to sequester carbon with our green infrastructure or our green seams program. So in 2008, we had started a project with a local landfill where they were flaring off the gas, the methane gas from their landfill, and just flaring it into the environment. So we worked a deal, 20-year deal, where they would treat that gas, pressurize it, and pump it down to our Jones Island facility. It's a 19-mile long pipeline. Take that gas in at Jones Island, burn it in new turbines, that's the upper right picture here, and produce electricity from those turbines. That has been operational since 2017 now, and as you can see, we're currently providing about 1/3 of our energy needs at Jones Island from this landfill. And then at South Shore, we have digesters. So we take the biosolids from the wastewater treatment process, we digest those solids, produce digester gas. And right now, about 60% of our energy needs this year have been provided by digester gas. Very similar, I know Chicago's doing this, others are doing this. The digester gas is really something every utility in the country should be doing because it's a resource that we have right there at our facilities. So we started looking at overflows. We started looking at water quality. We started wondering why our beaches were closing when there were no overflows. We started wondering what was the source of this pollution when everything was working the way it was supposed to. There was no issues and we were still having beach closings and rivers that you couldn't swim in. Every municipal area in the country has these issues. And what we started finding through work with the Southeast Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission was that it really was coming from urban and rural stormwater runoff. So that runoff from our surfaces of our land was causing these problems. So we started working through the watersheds and we didn't stop. You see this little red box, that is our sewer service area. We did not stop at that artificial boundary. We followed nature's boundary and did the entire Milwaukee River, which is the orange area, the entire Menominee River, which is green, the Root River, which were the headwaters of Oak Creek, Kinnickinnick River, and then direct drainage to the lake. We looked at the entire watersheds to determine the sources. And it was this work that showed us that stormwater, both agricultural and urban, was causing our problems. And that's where we had to take a shift. This was in 2008. We needed to move the needle so that we weren't talking about CSOs all the time. We were talking about water quality, because if we talked about CSOs all the time, we'd still have the problems and not be putting our resources where we needed to. So we started to change the discussion in 2008 to say, water quality is the most important thing, making sure that our drinking water is clean and that our waterways are open for recreation. And we'll have an occasional CSO, but we'll do everything we can to stop that. Let's look at the long-term water quality issues. So along with that, we have this flood management authority that we've had from the very beginning. And we have areas where all of our waterways were concrete lined. They were beautiful. 1960s, we went in and we straightened that creek out. We put a concrete lining on it, and it was terrible. It was the worst thing we could have done to the waterway. It sped the flows up. We had young residents pass away because they would play in that water because fast water looks fun. And it cut off the infiltration into the groundwater. So what we started was to work with nature. This is Underwood Creek. We completed upper right picture. We completed that about 3 years ago. That used to be a concrete line channel. That is in our urban core. But to look at it, you'd think you're in northern Wisconsin. We got the Menominee River on the bottom. This is in Wauwatosa. And then Valley Park is in part of the city of Milwaukee. This used to flood continuously. It used to have 11 or 12 homes on it. We tore the homes down, expanded the park, and now it's a flood management facility. These are the utilities, the infrastructure of the future. We also started looking at green infrastructure in the 2008-2009 timeframe. Now, we were doing it before that, but now we had the science to say this was causing us a problem. We needed to do something. So we started a program called the Fresh Coast 740. We did an analysis and we determined that if we want to capture that first half of inch of rainfall, which was what the vision had called for, that if we wanted to capture that rainfall, it was going to be about 740 million gallons of water. Fresh Coast is something Tom Barrett, my mayor of Milwaukee, who's been my mayor since 2004. And if you want to know a reason why this stuff can happen in Milwaukee, a great mayor who's been here a long time and is very supportive of this stuff, he gets a lot of credit for this. So we started a program where we're managing water where it falls. We're saying if that drop of water hits your land, how do we manage it better? And that's when we started the green infrastructure program. The rain barrels was the first initiative out the door. It was easy. You know, we'd go out and get some barrels, we'd cut them, cut some holes in them, put a hole in the top and put a downspout in it. A great program. We've got almost 4 million gallons of storage right now. What's really cool about this though, is look at these kids. Look at the people that are involved with this program. You're not only teaching them how to manage water better, but you're teaching them the value of water and the value of community. And it's just a phenomenal effort. We also started paying for green roofs. Originally, we were paying $5 a square foot. And as you can see, we've got a lot of green roofs in the area. Chicago's known for your green roof program, so hats off. We've done a great effort there. We are continuing to build green roofs as we go forward, and almost 500,000 gallons per storm. These are not annual numbers, these are per storm numbers. And actually this number is now 43 million gallons. Every day when I do a presentation, the number changes, but we are building green infrastructure with so many tentacles out into the community. As I said, where we started going to people and asking them if we could put it on, now they come to us and ask us if we will put it on their property. Great initiative in the 30th Street corridor on the bottom left corner here, getting the community involved with rain gardens, a school on the bottom right where we're converting pavement to green space, and then a green roof at the top with an education outreach program going on. And then the Green Seams program. This was one of the original, we started this around 1999-2000, one of the original efforts on a watershed-wide program to try to not pave the world over, but to try to save some of this land that was actually the natural sponges for our region. So we started a program called Green Seams where we go out and we purchase land that's in the floodplain or has wetland on it. We put an easement on that land and then we turn it over to land trusts or a community for passive recreation. And it looks like we even have some beehives on it. And originally this was just for flood management so that we didn't pave it and force water downstream that would flood someone out. But as we started to learn and become better stewards of the planet, we realized that what we needed to do was to try to reverse the negative impacts of climate change. So we started planting trees. We've got like 115,000 trees now, I think, on our property. And we're estimating that we've sequestered approximately 2,700 pounds of CO2 annually, which is approximately 1.2% of our annual emissions in 2007. So we're actually trying to mitigate the emissions that we were putting into the environment. And then we have green infrastructure where we want to be able to show the benefits of what we're doing. So we've created dashboards where you can, all GIS based, where you can go in and you can determine what's been built where. You see a big congregation of this in the urban core. This helps us track what we've done, and it also helps us with our permits. So in 2013, and we still have problems, but in 2013, we were having problems with some of our municipalities not wanting to build green infrastructure. We didn't learn about it in college, never done it before. It's so small, why would you want to do this? It makes no sense. Heard all of it. You know, I'm an engineer. I didn't have it in college. I didn't know if it would work or not, but we thought, you know, just think about nature and nature knows what she's doing. So we started implementing natural approaches, and In 2013, we were still getting some kickback from municipalities. So I worked with our friends at EPA and the Department of Natural Resources here at the state and said, what if you put a green infrastructure requirement in our wastewater permit? So back and forth negotiations, permit came out in 2013. It originally had a goal of 5 million gallons of green infrastructure to be built in the next 5 years. You know, as a permittee, we wanted to make it low because we wanted to make sure we could hit that number. We did 12 million in that first 5 years. And we decided, okay, with the next permit, we want to keep green infrastructure in the permit. And I think I heard Cam Davis was on this presentation when he was at EPA. He was a huge help on all of this with us. And so we added green infrastructure to the second permit. And that infrastructure green infrastructure requirement is for 50 million gallons in 5 years. So we went from 5 to 12 to 50. And again, remember the goal is 740, so we have a long way to go. And so right now we are trying to build 50 million gallons of green infrastructure with 20 of that in the combined sewer area, which is that core area of the service area, and 20 million gallons in the separate sewer area. Parallel to all this work, we also had the TMDLs, total maximum daily loads, being developed in partnership with EPA again. We took some of the stimulus funding from 2008 and we actually did third-party TMDLs for the state. So we were the consultant, if you want to call it that, developed the TMDLs, did the public outreach. Those were approved by EPA. And those have been a huge driving force for us as well, because the TMDLs tell us that there's certain reductions that need to be made through the reaches of the watershed. And to do that, we're using green infrastructure. So between TMDLs in 2017 or 18 being approved, and our two permits, 2013 and 2018 being approved, we were able to go to the communities and to the engineers, my brethren, and say, this is required. It's not something that is just nice to do. It's not an afterthought. This is a requirement of our permit and we need to get it done. From that point on, plus the fact that we're paying for all of it, they were very good partners. Right now, out of my 28 municipalities, I have 19 of them actively working on green infrastructure. So there's still a few holdouts. It's not perfect, but we're getting there. But the entire Milwaukee County set of communities, the core urban core that we have, they are all partaking in this effort. So this is the last slide. I might be a little early, but you know, how do you build community support from nothing? How do you take a program that people would snicker at more than listen to at the beginning? What I learned was, you know, again, water quality is the most important thing. I was at a presentation once where I presented the 98% overflow and someone said, well, how's the lake feel about that? And I said, well, the lake should be pretty happy because at least we're capturing 98% of it and none of us are perfect. But change the conversation. So now it's a water quality based discussion. It's not, I mean, we still get beat up for CSOs, but it's not like it was early in the 2000s. And Dave and others probably remember that. We also have been able to push the discussion that says water flows downhill. So whether it falls on a private parking lot or a public park, it eventually flows downhill. You really need to have a regional or watershed approach to that management of water, or else you're just going to be, you know, spinning your wheels. You're not going to get anywhere. And then we've pushed this message that as you work upstream, you really need to work on public and private property, and you need to incorporate these green natural solutions into the initiative. So we've seen, you know, we started out where Clean Water Act came out in 1972. We're going to do what we have to do for the Clean Water Act. So we built the deep tunnel system. We expanded our treatment plants. We did everything there. But then we started seeing this oddity where water quality improved, but not like we wanted it to. And we needed to start working upstream. So slowly we're just reaching up into the watersheds on urban and agricultural land. And we're dealing with various parties there. And it really takes a common message as you do this. You know, you can go out and say, MMSD doesn't want overflows. outside of MMSD, no one really cares, right? You know, they'd rather yell at you than care about that. But when you start talking about working to protect Lake Michigan, what is it we can all do to protect our drinking water supply, our recreation, our economy? Bringing that message where it's got that triple bottom line messaging behind it really starts bringing supporters to the table. And you have to include your past critics. Some of the folks that used to sue us are now my best friends. We have coffee once a month. We talk about ways to move forward on these initiatives. And there needs to be non-traditional partners. When I started, I didn't know anyone at the business community. You know, why would you partner with the business community or environmental groups? Again, how do you bring these folks together? So you really have to find those like causes, those like missions, and bring them to that point of working together. The technical support, that may have been the hardest piece, just getting all the different engineers and universities together to work on this. Having the School of Freshwater Sciences here in Milwaukee has been a huge benefit for us on that approach, because we can bring some of that research umbrella into the discussion about the technical needs that we have. And EPA has been a great partner for us on this. Those regulators putting this into our permit, and it was the first in the country to have this. I had folks, I used to be president of NACWA, folks would say, you actually asked for something to be put in your permit? And I'm like, yeah, you know, that's kind of what you need to do. So we started working with the regulators and working on common solutions as opposed to arguing about where the period is in a sentence, right? So let's get to water quality and not so much the talking. And then the last one, finding sustainable funding. Right now, MMSD funds the Green Infrastructure Program out of our capital and O&M budget, but mostly the capital improvement budget. And one thing that we've implemented, and it really started when I put this PowerPoint together, it was something that we just started this year. In January, we started something called the Fresh Coast Partnership Program, where we went out for an RFP for a group of consultants to determine where projects could be, purchase the real estate, do the public outreach, do the design, do everything that we were doing internally. It is a $20 million contract, and we're asking them to build 8.5 million gallons of green infrastructure for us in the life of that contract. And what we're hoping to do is use that to scale up. And because we have it packaged in a $20 million initiative, I can charge it to my capital improvement program. I can also go after different long-term funding vehicles. Clean Water Fund loans might be available for that, which we think they will be. And using some of the bonds that, municipal bonds that we go after to try to address this, this sustainable funding, because it has to be continuous and through a long cycle. And then earlier this year, pre-pandemic, we also became certified for a climate bond. And a climate bond is just a municipal bond that has the work that's going to be paid for totally devoted to climate mitigation projects. You have to have an outside certifier. And so we became certified in February of this year for climate bonds. And we issued a set of bonds in March, and then we refinanced in April another set of bonds. And we're hoping that climate bond, number one, brings more people to the table so that we can have more bidders on our bonds, but also gives us a better negotiation stance to bring those rates down. In the March issuance, we sold $80 million worth of bonds. I think it was 2.12% interest that we paid for that money. In August, we refinanced an earlier issuance, and we got 0.71% interest on those bonds. So we're hoping that that helps drive that discussion. But you really have to address all these. You have to have community outreach, community participation. You have to have sustainable funding. You have to have the regulators at the table. And it really is phenomenal staff that make this happen. They're the ones that are out there. All these tentacles in the community are them out working with their neighbors, with their communities, getting this job done. And this is the last slide. When I moved here in 2007, 2008, you never saw anyone in kayaks on our rivers. Never saw people swimming in our rivers. Now it's the summers, the rivers are just packed with kayakers and beer barges and all kinds of fun stuff. So it's really been fun to watch this metamorphosis. But you know, I never thought we'd be at this point when I started 20 years ago. So Chelsea, I think that's it. If there's questions, Q&A, I can take that now. I'm close, just 5 minutes early, I think.